to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. The answer to your question is learn the goddamn process, trade your trading plans, don't take too much risk on any one trade, and just let yourself get rich. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief. This is our free broadcast. Let's see. Can we try and do 15 minutes today? Always a challenge. I think I did about 30 minutes. I've been getting pretty good at the 30 minutes, but 15 minutes is a bit of a challenge. Before we get going, though, I did want to put a request out to people who do watch this video. Having a bit of a debate here as to whether there's any value for the public to see our little itinerary here in the lower right-hand corner you see on the screen. And I don't think that there's really a right or wrong here, but at the same time too, really the show is supposed to be for all of you. So can you maybe do me a favor? And in the comments, just tell me whether you like having this little sort of summary on the screen here, or is it a distraction? And sometimes I talk about things that happen to be on that part of the screen, and when that's up there, you can't see what I'm talking about. Really appreciate it. Obviously, we want to make this show the best for you possible. So if you could just give us your thoughts there, I'd appreciate it just for going forward. As you can see on this little itinerary here, there's really only one thing that's going on in the market today, and that is the semi-annual Humphrey Hawkins testimony of the U.S. Federal Reserve Board's chairman in front of today in front of the interesting. I'm not quite sure why the screen's blank like that. But anyway, you can see there's good old Jerry. Actually, Jerry's looking like he's aged a lot over the past few years. Well, I suppose that's the case, given the significant job that he has here trying to corral the economy. Anyway, point of the matter here is, and wow, it was kind of interesting listening to Elizabeth Warren, and it's interesting, they kept saying that she was from Massachusetts, this fine lady. I always thought that she was from Washington State. I actually saw like 2 or 3 of these people, chairmans and all that kind of crap, make reference from her being from Massachusetts, but I don't think that's the case. I thought she was from Washington. Of course, Washington's right around the corner for me, so I'm very familiar with her. Anyway, so this has been the really the only thing really pressing here in the market today so far this morning. From an American perspective. I've just been sitting listening to the testimony. And actually, interestingly enough, and this, of course, has been my thesis all along here. Anybody who's a student of mine knows full well about my greed and fear cycles. And we are now technically 6 years into the greed cycle. And through that entire period, I am uber bullish of the United States of America. The U.S., specifically, the U.S. dollar versus all of its peers. Not that the U.S. dollar itself is so great, because frankly speaking, I think all of these nations around the world are all technically bankrupt, these industrialized nations. But this is a kind of a situation where whose poop stinks the least. And I gotta say, it's interesting that the politicians even grilled Jerry specifically. And Jerry even said, United States economy relative to the rest of the world looks pretty damn good. And dramatically outperforming. And they even made reference to idiot communist nations just north of them, and what a disaster this situation is up here. And he also made reference to Europe. Unfortunately, I think that the inflation situation in Europe is far from over. So, gotta say, if you won't listen to the Beamish, then maybe listen to Uncle Jerry. But the United States economy, that's where it's at right now. And the interesting thing about that, of course, is, as I said there a second ago, it's not like I'm like, the fundamental situation in the USA is awesome. They're not that good. I mean, that is half the reason why we're interested in things like Bitcoin. And you might make the argument there are other commodity proxies that you can use as hedges against this great reset and all that nonsense. And I do believe that this is very much an orchestrated resetting. In essence, just add another zero onto the end of all your price tags. And then that way they can continue this debt con job for another generation, maybe even a couple generations. But it is what it is. I mean, unfortunately, it's way beyond our skill set to be able to change any of this. Unfortunately, we are beholden to these people, and this is the reality of the world that we live in. Buy Bitcoins. Or buy Bitcoin, right? Where we need the guy to hold up the sign in the back audience. We haven't seen those guys in forever. Remember that guy 4 or 5 years ago holding up the sign of these testimonies? I think that's when Granny was at the Fed. That was hilarious. I sure miss those days. So, can't really comment a hell of a lot about econs here today because there are none. And unfortunately, and it's interesting, I didn't even really hear them mention it too much. But we don't really have a hell of a lot of econs coming out tomorrow either. Hey, there it is. Nick, you're so look at geez, Nick is so sharp. He was the one who found references to the dashboard yesterday very quickly. I suppose we can give the public a little teaser here. Although, geez, that's awfully zoomed out. But anyway, Nick just posted this in the lounge. That's great. I sure miss those days. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, but anyway, we pointed out yesterday this very rarely happens. And I suppose if you are a crypto enthusiast, man, this is music to your ears. The irony of it all is that where are the Gucci sweater wearers? They are long gone, eh? I don't hear anything out of those kind of people. And for the record, no, this time was no different than any other typical seasonal correction. Hopefully now you have a newfound respect for Liz's birthday. I think we're going to now officially blame it entirely on Liz going forward. And it's still the challenge. Do those two, Jimmy and Liz, do they survive here? The challenge was I wanted to see them this next February, and I don't know. I sure hope they're hanging in there and learning. Anyway, so the point is our crypto top 30. This is from my old commodities trader day. I ran this service weekly. Keep in mind, weekly is the key word there, not daily. These are weekly signals, so really longer time frame. And commodity trend survey. And interestingly enough, because of course crypto is so schizophrenic and it's so volatile, most of the time when you actually go through these, a lot of stuff we see is just meh, meh, meh. You don't really, they're weekly trends. They're not supposed to spit up buy signals every day of the week. But it is interesting to see how we still have some problems with some of these stocks that are not reporting correctly. Anyway, never been closer. But it is interesting to see on our crypto top 30, which we added, and normally I wouldn't do this with venture cap, but this has been a really interesting experiment, for lack of a better term, in that one of our long-term members, Nick here, we pointed out yesterday that, back in the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I was publicly, repeatedly kept saying, get your act together, get your plan together, get your shit together, right? Your married together. Is that, if you say the word married, are you technically swearing? I wonder if Google calls that a swear word. I don't know. Anyway, and then we had some ladies in the audience, so I asked them, let's try and clean up Brian's potty mouth. So what else could we use? And they said, well, get your skirt together, which turns out that actually got a bit of traction. And guess what? We're back in that type of environment where we have just a whole bunch of names. They're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. These things are all against their lows now. You would think that they're all going to zero, that kind of nonsense talk. And yet our weekly commodity trend survey being the exact opposite. We want to buy when others are crying and sell when others are yelling. Well, the commodity traders are looking at crypto now going, keep in mind, this is only supposed to be 30 names. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 names. Holy crap. That's well over half of the universe is either inattractive or, you might be wanting to hunt some long entries here if you're one of those trader type persons. That's incredible. So, and if anything, I like this because, we always say, and, I've said this repeatedly, maybe you guys watching over there on YouTube can reiterate this. The big boys always correct what? Let's see if you guys over on YouTube can answer that question. And do you see how this is happening once again? That the little ones all get, thank you, Mr. Insights. Excellent post there. Hopefully the people over on YouTube, we got 20, 30 people watching this. Hopefully you all learn this. Thank you, Hafed. Hafed's such a sweetheart. Hope life's treating you well in Barcelona. Hope it's not too hot there for you. Anyway, so the point being that, the big boys are finally puking out. And if I understand correctly, I think the Germans just keep sending more Bitcoins to these exchanges for liquidation. Don't think it has anything to do with the fundamental story behind why one would be interested in Bitcoin. I might argue that, especially if you listen to people like JP Morgan, cost of production is around 45,000 US dollars for a Bitcoin. So, my hunch is if we actually ever do get to the point where Bitcoin's trading below value, holy crap, it's a screaming buy. But right now, it's going through its machinations. And we always say you can't write better fiction than reality. You just can't. Don't try to, because whatever reality is, it will make your sort of thinking of what's going to cause things like prices to correct almost laughable. And we always say you can't come up with a better story than what actually happens in reality. Who would have thought out of nowhere? Well, the reason why Bitcoin's selling off is because the country of Germany is selling Bitcoins. What? What a crazy story. And yet that's the reality of what's going on here. It is interesting to see, I guess, as the Humphrey Hawkins testimony winds up. We started watching it around 7 a.m. Pacific time. I think it's nearing its end. Jerry's been on the stand there for about 2.5 hours. We have the House of Representatives tomorrow. These Humphrey Hawkins testimonies are 2 days events. And like I said, not really a hell of a lot to talk about here econ wise. Interesting coincidence that there aren't any major econs coming out here through this event. So, I suppose one way that we can see how the market's reacting with regard to Jerry's testimony about things like the prospects for inflation and interest rates going forward, he did specifically say through his testimony that there was no way in hell he was going to make any comment through that Humphrey Hawkins testimony about what the next interest rate cut or hike was going to be. Although he did hint, and I think the market kind of liked what it heard, that he couldn't put a timeline on when the next Fed action would be. And my hunch is I wouldn't even be surprised if right through the whole election, they don't do anything here. They don't want to be seen as affecting the political outcome of elections, which, let's not open that can of worms. But if they go and cut rates here, heading into the fall here, that's going to clearly, I could easily see the GOP just turns around and says, "You're just pandering to this Biden guy because you want him reelected." I don't know whether the Fed really cares who's in charge of the executive branch. The executive itself is actually a relatively, I'm not going to say powerless, but they don't have as much power as to actually affect change in the economic landscape. If anything, the one thing that I absolutely love about the United States of America, and it's one thing. Thank you, Chris. It's one thing that you clearly see in Chinada right now is it is very healthy for a nation to have checks and balances and to be able to have various different sides of the government that in essence, and I think this is what the founding fathers actually wanted to see happen was to actually affect serious structural change in your country's direction. The whole nation must be on board one direction or another. And I think that's the one beautiful part about the way the US system is set up is it's actually extremely difficult to get the entire government all pointed in one direction for too long of a period of time. It happened in the reaction of George Bush Jr.'s administration. And that, of course, opened the door for, healthcare legislation through the early years of Obama. It happened, I suppose you could argue, just recently with Mr. Trump's eviction last cycle. And then, of course, the whole healthcare crisis. Ironically enough, you could argue that it can go both ways. I don't. Anyway, so the point being that because of checks and balances, the U.S. president doesn't have that much power. And then if they start going off on a tangent, quickly the U.S. populace every 2 years has the opportunity to check them. And that's exactly what happened with Biden's sort of runaway socialism plan and the whole MMT and the woke sort of movement and all that. A couple of years ago, the American populace went, "Whoa, slow down, you idiots." And they changed the power structure in the U.S. Congress there. Anyway, point of the matter here is I don't think that the Fed really wants to be perceived as affecting the election outcome. And since now we are getting through the summer, next meeting, I don't know whether they have another one here before August, but we are getting awfully close to the election. And my hunch is that they probably, unless we actually start to see the econs really fall apart, I don't think that they're going to even touch rates. And you heard Jerry in his testimony. If you are kind of a market fan and you like that kind of talk, we didn't hear anything out of Jerry today talking about the need for rate cuts here in the near term. If anything, what I heard out of him was, look, at people have made a critical error in the past about sort of declaring victory on inflation too soon. And unless you get in front of this thing and you're determined to get in front of it and you put the kibosh on it and you stay on top of it, inflation will come back really quickly. So if anything, we all sort of have to be a little bit thankful that the Fed is as vigilant as they are, because if you leave it up to these politicians, look in China here. China is the perfect example of a socialist government that's completely out of control. Really, there's no checks and balances, and the entire society is just falling apart. It's absolutely remarkable to watch the discontent in my country right now. So, if you're an American, ironically enough, I actually watched and I shared on the in the lounge there yesterday some really interesting sort of rhetoric from within the country. Like people within the country are basically making plans to leave, which was quite remarkable. The markets, as I had sort of said earlier, breadth. Well, actually, I don't know whether we really talked too much about it in earnest. I do think that we are getting a pretty interesting message from the speculative part of the market. So maybe we'll just leave the public commentary at crypto right now. Broader market, it's kind of wishy-washy. And I don't think you're going to get a massive direction one push one direction or the other until after the election, which means that there's probably going to be an absolutely explosive move once the actual election results happen. And ironically enough, it doesn't really matter who wins. I think probably the one thing that the market absolutely does not want is it does not want a one directional market. One directional political system, as I said. And, it's interesting if you actually look at Chinada, this guy who's in control of my country right now, just as an illustration for all of you. Where's the best place to do this? Actually, we are interested in this Alibaba as a trade idea. Damn, stock's jumping up here today, though. So unfortunately, I might have missed a trade opportunity. Anyway, we are doing a research report on this stock. Ironically enough, China of all places. But what I wanted to show you guys and girls and houseplants is this is what happens when you get a one-directional government. And you've seen all the images on social media and stuff like that. I mean, you could argue there's 2022. China has done absolutely nothing. At one point over the past year or two, oh boy, China was coming off big time. So I think you could make the argument that, coming out of the sickness and all the stimulus and stuff, did have bullish technical objectives achieved. And then as soon as, things like that trucker nonsense and stuff, which I don't think could happen down in the States, but the way that, the despot just sort of frees people's bank accounts and all that kind of stuff. I mean, really, China has done absolutely nothing here. It's been a big hurry up and do nothing market. So it is interesting that in this country now, we don't have elections until well into next year. You might find that this thing just sits and flounders, for the next good, probably, we won't have our elections until well over here. So I guess because there isn't any econs today, I don't really want to read too much into what we're seeing price action with regard to the broader market. All I'll just simply say is Jerry's, I think he basically painted a pretty bullish tone for the US economy. I didn't hear any talk about the Americans lowering interest rates anytime in the near term. So as a result, US dollars catching a bit of a bid here. And I did hear specifically them make reference to the fact that things like Europe, and it's interesting how Japan just keeps devaluing their currency over and over. Remember, we had actually, this is a really good lesson, but maybe we'll talk about it in the after party. Do find actually, I'll just finish off with this thought. We've been watching our inflation deflation guide really closely here. You can see how we're just stuck in this sort of moving average wedge. Interesting how this will come to a head here around September, October, heading into the election. I wouldn't be surprised if our inflation deflation gauge just simply bangs back and forth here between these two trend lines here going forward. So as a result, I do think that things like gold and silver and stuff are probably going to be stuck in a trading range for the time being. And I wouldn't even be surprised if things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are stuck in a trading range. Did notice that Ethereum is trying desperately. Of course, we still have the second half of this short position working. Stops are at scratch. Doesn't really matter what happens here. I do like to have these on as number one, a demonstrator of best practices. But number two, I mean, really, this is how I trade. I want to strap a position on. I want to set like a 2 to 1. If I can sell half of the position on that event, and then you got basically a risk-free trade with your stop at scratch on the remaining. You've already made some money on the first half, and I don't know what the hell's going to happen in the future. Like I said, don't get into the business of predicting the future because it's a mug's game. So with that said, and with that sort of idea that probably everything goes into a nice trading range here until we get through the election, I wouldn't be surprised if something like an Ethereum, you can see the double bottom. It's come in here. They are trying to accept. Moving averages are crossing back bullishly. This is a 4-hour chart. There's fog and bombs off of that double bottom. This is also a pretty valid double bottom too, because this is a clothesline W, right? Nice solid closes down at that level. So I have a feeling that we're setting the stage for our summer silly season. I don't know whether you're going to get rich on something like an Ethereum or Bitcoin for that matter. I wouldn't be surprised if these guys are, basically stuck in a range, but I could very easily see 15-20% rally in the corn. Maybe this short does get stopped out at scratch. Could be. So I think that there is an opportunity over the next, say, month or so that this thing just grinds its way back up to trendline resistance. And actually, you can even see this could potentially be like a head and shoulders. So that's your neckline. That's your left shoulder. There's your head. Then we come back to the neckline. Then we consolidate for a shoulder. And then we find out, heading through actually, this would just be the end of July. But we find out whether this trend line is for real, or do we just go and M out here and continue working our way down. So, but this little window here, I think this actually represents the opportunity if you are interested in things like buying the poop coins against the bottom ends of range, because they're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So here's one I actually bought the other day. Thank you, Chris, for helping me with this transaction, because I'm dumb as when it comes to crypto and working with the ledger and stuff like that. Oh my God, I'm just so stupid. But anyway, I think we might even just move whatever we have on the ledger and the stable coins over to a centralized exchange, and I'll just trade off of that going forward. But anyway, point of the matter here is you can actually see a W is trying to come in on Bancor here. 2.618s, maybe that's that inverted head and shoulders that we see on things like Ethereum. 4.669s are nothing more than just a 50% bounce of the previous trading range here established back on that March peak. And who knows if this thing gets going crazy, well, I've got my sell halves on double orders working up at 50% levels, and I'm more than happy to let them have some if we go into some crazy ass orgy. I don't think that's going to happen. But at the same time, too, kind of like what our dashboard is suggesting is, if you are a value hunter, now's the time when you actually have to start accumulating this stuff. The irony of it all, though, is that most people are not interested in the market now. And this is the business, maybe write this down. You want to be selling when Gucci sweater wearers are what? Let's see if we can have some participation from the audience. When Gucci sweater wearers are doing what? We must be selling. Thank you, Nick. Certainly not buying. Oh, get rid of that Medi guy. You just lost your TRI membership. We need to be selling. Selling 5K courses. All right, there you go. And when they're crying because now they can't afford even gasoline for their Lambos, and oh, hey, look, is your Lambo getting reproduced or repossessed there? The repo man's coming after your Lambo, Mr. Gucci sweater, right? That's when we want to be buying. And I get the impression right now that, man, not very many people are interested in this space. And I've actually just been on public telling all of you that I am actually buying. I am actually spending money. So, go figure. All right. Today's Tuesday. Usually Tuesdays we have Pennacook Day, but Mr. Steward's on vacation. So we're going to just banter around a bit on the site in the after party, maybe an AMA kind of session. Yeah, the free broadcast was a little bit too long here today, as usual. Way to go, Brian. One day I'll get my act together. And I don't know if you guys could tell me whether you found the little thing down there in the lower right hand box. I'm not even quite sure what we call that. The itinerary, the schedule, sort of talk. Yeah, so you get a visual idea of what it is that I'm going to be talking about here today, and what I talk about on these free broadcasts. Can you just let me know if you are like, oh man, that's terribly distracting, and I would prefer that you don't have that. I'd like to see that, and then that way I'll make a decision going forward whether I want this on the screen or not. I like it, but there are other people that have suggested that it's not really productive. So give me your feedback here, people, and I'll make a decision based on what you guys are saying to me. As well, too, you guys in the hangout here, Nick, Mike, Lucas, Glass Insights. If you could give us your feedback on this, I'd appreciate it. Okay, that's your free broadcast for today. As I said, today was just primarily about Humphrey Hawkins. I think there was a lot of valuable information that you could have gleaned out of Mr. Powell there speaking today. So, maybe do yourself a favor and just sit and listen to it and try and pick up on some of the cues that he made with regard to the health of the US economy, the direction relative to all its trading partners. And then I think you'll understand why the market's acting the way that it is right now. US stock market's super strong, so I certainly wouldn't get in front of that. But at the same time, too, we're in this really weird world where it's like the Nifty 50. So if you want a historical context on what this market looks like, I think you actually have to go back to the 1940s and 1950s. Maybe, maybe tomorrow I'll pull up that generational cycle. Maybe do it in the after party. That'll probably be a good reference for TRIers just to get an idea of where we are on the historical perspective. And, long and short of it here is get ready for an incredible bull market. It's coming. And actually interesting, we'll leave on this note. There was actually a stock market that actually broke to new all-time highs today. And the last time they did it was because their currency was being massively devalued to prop up their export market. And they're doing it again. They always say history doesn't rhyme, but man, I guess no, it's the other way around. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure often rhymes. And wow, I think history is repeating itself. So, all right. Have yourselves a great day. PMA for the win. All the best. We'll see everybody in the after party here shortly. The only thing left for me to say to you good people is bye for now.